designing things that work better. How many of you have read the book Clockwork by Mike Michalowicz? Show of hands. Okay, fantastic. So please go out and get the book. It's pretty awesome. The premise of the book really is about figuring out what your organization really fundamentally does well, called the Queen Bee role, and then the rest of it really talks about how you can integrate systems and processes and automations, right, to really help you scale the thing up without, killing you, because building growth companies is hard. Building companies in general is hard. It's a really fantastic book. So we're doing a workshop in the SoCo community at the beginning of December. We're doing a group read, and then we're going to sort of implement what we can and talk through some of that with Clockwork. And it's very relevant for what we're about to talk about. We have a great group of panelists that are going to hit us right before lunch. That are going to talk about automation in the workplace, and that is a very broad topic, right? It covers technology, it covers process, a lot of things. But we have 3 folks that really either do this professionally within their companies, right, or have leveraged this to achieve some level of success and growth. And so we're really excited to have these folks on stage. I want to introduce them very quickly. Our moderator for the session is going to be Colin Griffin. He's the founder and chief engineer with a fantastic enterprise solutions company here called Crumware. Crumware provides solutions development and mentorship services for technology companies, helping enterprises build better software and software developers. I have to read it because it changed very recently. So they were founded in 2017. Colin and his team have incubated inside the SoCo community. We're very proud of them. They've been longtime members. We're very excited to have them. They've grown to a team of over 10, and they are doing some incredible work, and it was born and bred and grown right here in Columbia, South Carolina. So let's welcome Colin to the stage very quickly. Next up, we have Jamie Thomas, who is the CEO for a fantastic company you may or may not have ever heard of. But they probably power some of the things that you actually work with and use in your business. So Jamie's the co-founder and CEO of Cognito Forms. They're an early-stage, fast-growing technology company based right here in Columbia. A couple years ago, they spun out of VC3 and relocated down in the Vista, our burgeoning and emerging technology hub for the city. Cognito Forms launched in 2013, and since their launch, they have built an incredibly diverse, rapidly growing, and global customer base. So they're embedded in a lot of companies in a lot of places, and they're doing this incredible job of creating a platform for building applications to empower their customers. We are very fortunate to have Jamie today. So Jamie, come on up. Let's give him a round of applause. Last but definitely not least, color commentary included, is Brian Murdo, the CEO of Fiveable, one of our GrowCo companies. 10 years ago, he co-founded Fiveable. They're a custom software development shop located right here in the Midlands. They serve businesses across the country. They really specialize in some super nerdy stuff, enterprise systems, payment processing, task automation, Internet of Things, IoT, telephony, SMS, and mobile native applications. Brian really prides himself on being able to take complicated data systems, because that's not uncomplicated, and applying them to everyday business systems with constant attention and to scale and usability. Brian is also a fantastic human. We're very excited to have him on the stage. Please come up and let's give him a big round of applause.
Test. Oh, it works. It works. All right. How's everybody doing today? Hopefully, we can make this a little bit conversational as well. So if anybody kind of has a question or a comment along the way, just kind of raise a hand and we'll try to bring a mic to you. We will have time for questions at the end. But our talk is going to be cut a little bit short so we can make an extra announcement today and then also get to lunch because everyone wants to get to lunch and eat. So today, we wanted to focus on automation. And we needed to pick a topic for technology, but technology is really a big, scary, and honestly super broad word. It's almost meaningless now to just say, I do technology. Everybody expects to use technology in some form or facet in their business, and a lot of times they just don't really know how to get started because that is such a big, broad, scary task. We're hearing things today like cloud is an obvious one, right? We're hearing Kubernetes, we're hearing AI, blockchain, we're hearing WebAssembly and Rust and those things. And those are new ones. Yeah, wait for those to come down the pipe. That's going to be a lot of fun. Just yet another thing to adopt. But what we try to focus on is we don't want to specialize and be companies that specialize in one of those types of businesses. Those are just utilities to us, right? We want to bring those technologies together to enhance our business. And the way to do that is through the glue, which really is automation. And it's a great place to start. So what we're going to do is we're going to kind of go through a little bit of that journey and just talk about automation and how we can actually leverage that in our business, how we can get started, and some of the intangibles behind it as well. What are some of the other benefits of implementing automation as part of your business? So the first thing that we wanted to talk about is what role has automation played in the growth or the foundation of your business? And we'll start with you, Brian.
Yeah, I think this is interesting because, I think Greg gave us a little bit of a preface to our talk. He was like, hey, don't make it too nerdy. And I'm like, look, man, you finally let the nerds on stage and we're not allowed to talk about the stuff that we want to talk about. No, but really, it comes down to having the ability to build processes, and that's really what it is, right? Because the nerdiest of nerds, as we accelerate and grow our own businesses and build really cool stuff, build meaningful stuff, it's really about drawing those boxes. It's really about saying, look, I can solve a problem because I know this technology exists. And there's someone who can code that. Maybe that's not me right now. Maybe it is. So I think, the question gets down to, it's really not about code. Can you code? Yeah, sure, it doesn't matter. People can code. But now we're at a specific point in time when all of this stuff is going to enable businesses to grow because we don't have to let our smartest people do silly, dull things all day long.
Yeah, and some of our businesses were pretty much grown out of the need for automation and the ability to do things easier.
Yeah.
Jamie.
So Cognitive Forms, we were started at VC3, which is a large consulting company here in Columbia. We were doing custom consulting for businesses that had already decided they wanted to automate their solutions. They had a problem, they wanted us to automate it. And we were in there developing a solution for a customer, and then the next week would be a different customer, and it'd be the same problem over and over again. We're like, this is crazy. How much money people are having to spend to automate something that should be easy. And so we felt it was a real need in the market to make it so that those customers could automate their problems themselves. That's why we developed Cognitive Forms. We wanted to empower other people to be doing what we were doing. Be geeks, write code, not realize they're doing it. We tricked them into doing it. And so we developed Cognitive Forms, launched it globally, and it's been great. And then we had that opportunity to spin off about 3 years ago. And it was like the time was right. It was like, we don't need all this junk that businesses need anymore. We can just go find a building, and we can get internet access, and we can get a printer for those occasional times we have to print. Everything can be automated. And so it was such a liberating moment to realize, it's easy now. The automation makes a lot of that stuff so much easier now today.
Yeah, and at Crumware, what we try to do is we try to leverage projects as an assisted or an applied learning tool to help companies really start to build the technology side of their organization, really start that innovation machine turning. And automation, almost every single one of the times, is really the lowest hanging fruit for a company to get that process started, because it doesn't take high-level software developers or CTOs to implement automation and just basic tools and use that and leverage that in your process. So it's one of the first things that we turn to when we're trying to find ways to make an impact at that company and to put tools in the hands of people who typically didn't think that they would be a software developer or do these kinds of techie, nerdy things. And it really unlocks potential for them. But another thing it really does is kind of tie you back to the business systems, right? You're actually working on the business when you're creating these processes. And so, that's a great thing to talk about is, so why do you guys think that automation is important to these companies and plays an important role?
Yeah, I'll start with that. So, I'm a strong believer that all of us here in this room are special. Our businesses are special, and they're special for a reason. And we've had some of these talks where you need to know your brand, you need to know what makes you special. And then once you know that, you need to make sure that's the only thing you're doing, right? which means you need to take all that other stuff, that noise, those distractions, and you need to automate them so that you don't have to worry about them. You know, our financials, you know, we have to do financials. We're a business, right? We can close our financials in 1 hour every month. That's it. And those are the types of things you want to be thinking about is what makes you special. That doesn't make you special. Some of the HR stuff doesn't really make you special. It's what you do for your customers that makes you special. So make sure that your people are doing that and automate all those other things.
You know, sort of similar to your financials thing, I had an engineer who on his calendar every Wednesday morning, he had a set of tasks he had to run on about 20 different servers in our infrastructure. And it took him about 4 hours to run these tasks. Every Wednesday, I know you paid an engineer 4 hours a week, it starts to become silly. And we actually handed that task off to someone else who in 1 4-hour period wrote a script that would do all that with one key press, and then the script could do it in 25 minutes. And an AWS EC2 instance running for 25 minutes is way cheaper than an engineer for 4 hours. Yeah, totally. But I think we're at this interesting inflection point about automation being primed. I thought about it this morning as I was getting ready. When I started my career post my software engineering training at Carolina, I remember building forms. Forms are a pain. Thank you, Jamie. Thank you. But forms are a pain in the neck. They used to be an enormous pain in the neck. And now I know that my 7-year-old can go home and build a Google form that'll capture data into a spreadsheet, or a Cognito form that'll capture data in a spreadsheet in like 5 minutes. It used to take engineers hours and hours and hours just to get data and shove it into a database to do that kind of work.
I like the Cognito plug there.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Yeah. It's strategic partnerships, man.
Yeah, and so we do all actually leverage each other's tools, which is awesome, right? Keep it local. I'm probably going to, for the sake of time, skip ahead just a little bit, because I think we can kind of combine our next questions a little bit. You know, the big thing, we're talking about this, and this is great, like all the things that we can do with this, but, you know, we need to focus on how do we do this now? You know, how do I get started, and why now? So, you know, we can talk about some examples. For us, there's really 2 main applications for automation that we can think about in relation to how we operate our business and grow our business. And one of those is leveraging automation and tools to monitor our business, right? To keep track of what's going on and keep a pulse on things so we're not constantly tapping people on the shoulder, asking for reports, reading things, like doing all of that stuff when maybe it's just a flag that needs to be raised, right? So what are some examples of automation and how you use it to actually monitor and run the business as a whole, and maybe some tools that somebody can pick up to get started easily?
Yeah, so actually the first example that comes to mind to me is we actually adopted right at the beginning of the pandemic is just a really simple SaaS tool called Geekbot. We're a Slack company. I know there are a lot of people who use Slack. Geekbot is a really simple tool that just manages automating morning stand-ups. So we used to, you know, stand around a circle in the office and say, okay, you know, what is your one thing you got to do today? What's blocking you? And is there anything else we need to share? You know, there's just a set of questions. And Geekbot automates that all now through Slack so that we don't, since we can't sit around, we don't have to wait, and we don't have to think about, and it's automatic and it happens. So the funny part for me is that I had a really, really hard time answering my question first thing in the morning because, you know, being in the leadership role meant that I could not think about things. My day was already interrupted. And I actually posted on LinkedIn the other day, say, if I sit down at my desk and I don't know what my one important thing for the day is before I sit down, I am lost. The day is absolutely gone. So in about 15 minutes that night, I wrote a little quick, no code, right? No code at all. Wrote a little quick automation using Zapier and Twilio, just clicking boxes and saying, I want this, I want that, I want this. I just understood the process, right? And now I get a text message at 8 o'clock every night that says, okay, what are you going to answer? How are you going to answer the Geekbot in the morning so that your team knows that you're on top of things? Huge, huge difference. And seriously, 15 minutes, it costs 2.5 cents a month or something. It's ridiculous to do it. So Zapier's enormous. And a lot of these, Twilio, if you don't know, is a telephony SMS messaging system, but they have their own no-code and then no-code, low-code systems that you can implement just as a person who understands how things need to work, not as a developer, not as a super geek, whatever.
Yeah, and Jamie, you talked about automating your closeouts and things like that. Maybe you can mention a tool that you're using for that, or a whole other thing.
Yeah, a couple of topics here. So one, I started my career as an intern at NCR here in Columbia, and I was hired to answer phones. They figured out I couldn't do that very well, and so they asked me if I wanted to run reports. And then the next week they're like, "Do you want to write the reports?" I was like, "Yes, let's do that." So I learned a lot, and it started me off in the software development career, which has been amazing. But one of the things we did when we started Cognitive Forums is we realized, here are all these reports we need to run. We don't want to actually be that person that's like, "Oh, it's time to run reports. Let's go pull all the data together and pull out spreadsheets." And I'm sure you've been there and you've had to do all that, and it's just a pain in the rear. We need to be able to make sure that data is available anytime we need it, right then. So we adopted Power BI, which is a Microsoft Office 365 product, got the data to where it was syncing into that in real time, put together the reports that were meaningful to us, and now I can pull out those reports in real time on my phone or anywhere I am in the world, and I never have to think about it. It's just there. And that's what you want to be thinking about as part of your automation strategy. What is important for you to make business decisions, and how do I make that just happen? You don't need to be thinking about it. It just needs to be there. And then you mentioned, we actually adopted online software Xero, which is similar to QuickBooks Online, to do our accounting. And we adopted it primarily because of the automation. It let us automate every little piece of the process so that when we're ready to go to close, it's just like reconcile, 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 green light, we're good, done. Okay, let's move on to the real business.
That sounds like a dream. I love that. What about, you guys, I love that Brian brought up Zapier, because that's a seed, but you guys actually leverage automation as part of the product, right? So you're enabling automation with Cognito, but you've leveraged partnerships and integrations and things that enable that automation too.
Yeah, that was one of the really cool things when we were starting Cognitive Forums. Products like ours that were in that form space, we're having to write all these integrations with third parties. And we had Zapier and Microsoft with their Power Automate platform had come online. So now we just had to integrate with these integration platforms, and now we were able to integrate with hundreds, even thousands of other cloud services in real time. So we have customers like there's a large nonprofit in California that handles low-income housing. They have 18,000 families they support. And earlier this year, actually in January, they transitioned everything online through our product and used Power Automate to push data out to all of their people so that they could be informed, moving away from paper processes and PDFs. And then guess what happened in March? They all had to go home, and they were like, if they had not done that, their entire system would have melted down. It was all driven off paper. And that Power Automate and the Zapier was the key to allow them to get that data to flow out, go into reports, make sure it was always right there in the hands of the people that needed it, right when they needed it.
Yeah, and some other, I like that you brought up the business applications with Microsoft Azure. So who in here would consider they're a Microsoft shop? Everything in their business is Microsoft. What about Google? Who's using Google Apps and Gmail and all that good stuff? So a great way to get started in some of the automation is to look internally at those suite of tools. If you're on Microsoft and you have Microsoft Live, I guess, or you're using Azure, and there's a ton of what we call like no-code solutions on there. It's point and click. You can build apps, you can build forms, you can build interfaces, and you can implement with Power BI, and you can harvest all of your data and move it to a single place and actually run analytics and reports and monitoring and reporting and do all that magical stuff without touching a bit of code, right? And so they have tons of great training and stuff out there. That's a great place to get started. Google's got a really good one called AppSheet that they just did. And I noticed last night when I was using somebody else's application, it took me to a Google AppSheet application for a product I was paying for, which is really interesting too. So it might be a great way to build a product using the things that are hard in your business also. For the sake of moving on, so we've talked on some ways to kind of get started and some tools that you can implement. You can implement chat. You can implement emails. There's tons of bots and things to automate your inbox. Superhuman is a great example of that for like an email tool that kind of helps you do things like that. But pitfalls, right? What are some of the scary things that we should be considering when it comes to automation? Because these can be fun things, but...
Yeah, I would say the first thing is that when you're building systems like this, thing A is you really have to start with the goal in mind. We always say start at the end. Like, what are you really trying to do? And then back it out through documentation. Just because maybe you're not going to hire a set of engineers to build this for you and you can do it with a low-code system or something like that, it doesn't mean you shouldn't document it. Because you still have to eliminate single points of failure, still have to make sure that, oh, wow, you know what, there's some PCI data or some PII data that really needs to, for regulation purposes, like, it needs to be kept, in systems that don't sort of like, you can't send that stuff over email. All of those sorts of considerations are there, and you still have to make sure you're testing these systems. We see a lot, to your just point, Colin, is we see a lot of products coming in that are kind of like more than half-baked, like ready for the next level of scale, and maybe that's when they hire a firm like one of ours to actually sort of like build it into a big scalable code as code project. But I think you really have to start with that. Like, make sure that you're documenting things, make sure that people understand, and then watch for the sort of rogue coders out, and let them build, encourage them to build, but make sure that you're not like throwing people under the bus in terms of quality or single points of failure.
Yeah, and quick point, it's also a great excuse to actually start documenting your actual processes alongside that. So if you haven't done that yet, kill two birds with one stone.
Yeah, the key they were saying over and over is documentation. It's great to write software, but if you don't document what you need before you start doing it, then you don't, at the end, have documentation for what you did. If you don't evangelize this automation in your workplace, you're replacing this manual process potentially with this automated process. It's not like the day you flip the switch, all of a sudden it works. You still have to train everybody. You still have to educate them on why it's important, why this change that you're introducing in your organization makes sense, and why it's important for them. And I'll just reiterate what you said. You wouldn't go hire a lone wolf developer to go build this system off, and spend $20,000 building this custom system, because you would be like, well, what happens if they just disappear? Don't do the same thing in your organization. Don't just be like, oh, here, intern, go build this system for me, and then I'll start using it. Well, that's great. Well, that person may go away. And so, we have customers today, they will build these amazing automations, and they'll use our product to do it. They'll have this one person that's the owner that set it all up, and then they'll walk out the door. And then they're like, wait a second, where did all this stuff go, right? You've got to make sure that you're doing everything right. Even though you're doing it at lower cost, you're doing it yourself, you still need to be invested in that process.
Yeah, and an extra one that I'd caution on too, so obviously as software developers, we touch enough companies that never document. It's actually profitable for us. It's great. So stop documenting and then call us, and that's cool. We'll fix it for you. But one of the things too is like, this is really exciting. It's once you kind of get started and get that ball rolling, you're really going to get into it and want to start hooking everything up, and you can pretty quickly end up with spaghetti, right? You can end up with a total mess where all these things are talking to each other, and then there's chaos. So stay focused and don't overdo it. Start with one thing, move on to another thing. You make sure that it's beneficial. Also, don't spend 20 hours on a task that, automating a task that really only takes you 5 seconds. You can probably skip that.
Right, and I would say, like, take a pause on that thing, too, is, like, build a small atomic thing. Like, tackle one task. Find that task that's going to save a little bit of time and build that, and then you'll get addicted to it, and you'll start building all kinds of crazy stuff.
Exactly. Just get the ball rolling. One last point, and then we have just a little bit of time for questions. We're all three going to be around here anyway, so if we got too nerdy and we need to explain something, or you want to come up with ideas or brainstorm, how can we get started? Ask us afterwards. We're open books for this stuff. I want to talk about intangibles, right? Because, again, this can be a carrier. It can be a vehicle for change within the company. To provide this new tool and this new thing that we are doing now, right? We're being innovative and we're automating. So let's talk about some of those intangibles. How does this affect culture? What are some of the things this might teach people?
Well, we talked about it when we were doing some prep for this about the mindset of automation, right? So, for you as a potentially a business owner, your mindset should be what I talked about at the beginning, which is, what makes my company special? What makes me special? How do I automate all those things that aren't special? But then as you're looking at hiring employees and looking for their mindset, right? You want to find somebody that gets really annoyed at doing something over and over again. They're just like, ugh, I don't like this. You want to hear them complaining about it, and then you want to empower them and say, hey, that's great. Why don't we channel that energy towards automating that problem? Here's some of these tools. I'll help with that. I'll provide support and guidance. You want that because that's going to make your business more successful, and you're going to be empowering your employees to get rid of those things that they don't want to do. If you have somebody that's just sitting around going, I don't mind pushing the button for 4 hours, they're not really moving your business forward.
Yeah, I would say the mindset thing is huge. It's same thing. Like, find people who are tired of that. Find people who, grew up playing way too much Nintendo. Like that. Even if they're not developers, it's that sequential. This is how a thing works. That process thing, taking apart RC car, whatever they did as a kid that pushed them into that role. I think that helps with that mindset.
Yeah, and I can't stress enough. We talk about innovate. It's exhausting. But yes, we know we need to do it. Now shut up. How do we do it?
Ship.
This really, it's incredibly low-hanging fruit to give somebody, to look at somebody and say, what task can you automate? Here are some tools. Do you want to go figure it out? We have had cases in the past where somebody's had the opportunity, been tapped on the shoulder and said, hey, you were pretty good at that. Do you want to kind of do this for the rest of the company and change careers a little bit? It's unbelievable how much potential that it can unlock in somebody, because this really is low-hanging fruit. It's small micro tasks that you can figure out how to automate, and you can start that machine turning just by giving this a shot, just by trying to see if there's ways that I can make my life easier for myself, which sounds kind of silly, but it's true. So I think that about wraps us up. We have like 1 minute left. We have time for one question maybe, and then we will be around. So does anybody have a question or a fear or anything about how to kind of get this journey started? I'm just brainstorming and throwing out sample questions. Yeah.
That was great. That was great. Thank you. Have you ever worked with any companies in construction and helping them to kind of automate any of the processes that we use? I'm just curious.
Yeah, so we personally have done a significant amount of work in automation in the construction field, especially around home building, around commercial real estate, around rural land real estate, anywhere where there's data that needs to be pulled together into a single place, because everything is fragmented in a lot of those industries and it's really archaic and all that. You don't want to have somebody sitting behind a computer clicking links and downloading PDFs and CAD plans and stuff for, 40 hours a week for Anyway, I could go on all day about that. But yes, it is ripe for automation. And if somebody tells you that they won't give you the data from their website, which happens a lot of construction, call me because we'll figure it out and make it happen. But yes, there are ways to do it. Don't ever let somebody say no to you. But what about you guys?
Yeah, I would say that especially in the project management space, that's one of those places where there are project management tools that kind of work off the shelf, but one of the places where you get a lot of low-code, no-code management is some of those automation tools, even though they don't work exactly for your process, with a little bit of time spending underneath the hood, you can say, oh, but now I can switch this around. You look at your Trellos and your Monday.coms, and even some of the sort of big enterprise-level construction project management stuff, it's not going to work off the shelf. Yeah. But once you spend a little time under the hood, that's when you start to really feel like, this is going to match what we have to do, and the thing that really makes you, and it's meaningful.
You've got to have customers.
We have thousands of customers in the construction space. Yeah, I think the point there is that you find the solutions that let you customize it yourself to your specific needs, because every business is a little bit different, and a lot of those sort of hard packaged off-the-shelf products just kind of melt down. So,
perfect. All right, so with that, I'll hand it over to Greg, but thank you for your time. This has been a lot of fun, and go eat in a minute after Greg.
In a minute. Let's give these guys a round of applause. Sometimes you just need a little nerdy. Okay, so we have a couple of things. First of all, we have a special announcement, and then we're going to do some housekeeping, get you ready for lunch, and then we're going to let you know why we have some excellent opportunities to come back from lunch and stay with us. So without further ado, we just got done talking about automation. We're talking about growth. We're talking about scale. But what is growth? What is the Growth Summit really about? It's really about getting to announce really cool stuff that we didn't know was happening and is now happening. So if you all could if you're on social, get ready for it. Please help us to celebrate this thing. We have, where is she? Laura Bokenfuso coming back to the stage. She had mentioned something before she wasn't really at liberty to talk about. Well, she is now, and so we're going to talk about it. So hopefully y'all can celebrate this with her. But Laura, come on up and tell us the good news, please.
Thank you so much, Greg. I won't keep you very long. I just wanted to share something really exciting. We finally got the okay to broadcast it. Our company, Van Robotics, was included in Time's Best Inventions of 2020 this year. So you'll be seeing that in a lot of our social media posts. We have worked so hard to get to this point, and I mean, the reason we got into this was to help as many kids as possible to get back to at least proficiency level and beyond. And so I feel like now we can broadcast our message and people will really know the work and the diligence behind the product. And so we're super excited for the holiday season. If you're looking for a smart robot tutor for your K-5 student, look up Van Robotics. Thanks so much.
Guys, this is happening right here in your city, y'all. Incredible opportunities. Congrats again, Laura, and the team. Y'all are doing incredible stuff. We're proud of you. All right, Aaron.
Yeah. So I have a couple of thank yous and housekeeping items, and then Greg is going to close this out, and you guys can head to lunch. So I want to thank, if they're still here, any of our University of South Carolina students who've been doing registration. There are two of them back there. Can we give them a round of applause? They've been here all morning checking you guys in.
Talent.
And I'd like to also thank one of our co-organizers who's not been on the stage yet today, Sergio with the City of Columbia. Please stand up, sir. Can you thank him? You probably all know Sergio. You all know what he does, but without him and his office, this event would not be possible. He's been my planning partner along with Matt Beatty, and I really can't thank him enough. And I want to give a shout out to all of our vendors who've helped put this day together, and we're here many hours yesterday getting set up. And that would be ACS Sound and Lighting there in the back doing all the AV. Grow by ERG Marketing Company is on site, sort of live tweeting, live sending out updates from this event, and they've been helping us market it all the way. Something Borrowed is our event rentals company who's provided pipe and drape and some other things for us. And Secret Park, of course. They do a lovely thing in that they give a discount to nonprofits who host events here, which makes this possible for us. And for that, we are very, very grateful. It's a fantastic space this year for this event. Let's give them all a round of applause. So lunch, it will be served down that corridor. There are boxed lunches for you guys. And a reminder that there's additional seating down this corridor as well as the restroom, so you can use that for your sort of lunchtime break if you like. You can also sit in this space in this room, also totally fine. If you wander downstairs to the concourse, it's probably wide open for you. It's a balmy 55 degrees outside. If that's your thing, please do. And we're going to try to get started back in here. We're running a few minutes behind, but we're going to try to get started back here at 12:55 for our last two sessions of the day.
And to motivate you to get your booties back, we have an incredible thing that we're doing right after lunch.